think about what is coaching for a sec. What is it to you? Coaching can be leadership, it can be training, it can be teaching, it can be mentoring. There's lots of different ways we can think about coaching. For example, you can start on the top left. There's what your friends think you're doing, what your mum thinks you does, what society thinks you do, what you think you do, what the kids think you do, and then what you actually do. Probably just pulling your hair out and going, what just happened? So coaching, it's a funny thing. I'm a coach. I've been involved with coaching young people in the sport of volleyball for a couple of years now, and also training elite athletes in mental preparation. And it's a fun, rewarding, yet often very challenging and sometimes confronting role. You find some interesting experiences. And of course we get the old, that's coaching. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not coaching. Regardless of how bad the behaviour is, meeting bad behaviour with bad behaviour, it isn't the way to go. So coaching behaviours in sports. About 35 years ago, some research was done to really find out what coaches do, what do they do, and how does their behaviour affect athletes. 52 coaches were observed in 202 games. This is a psychology approach now. 1,122 behaviours were recorded for every single coach. So someone sat there and went, he smiled, he laughed, he nodded, he cheered, he scolded, he rewarded, example, etc., etc. 542 players evaluated their coach's styles, a really in-depth look. And they found that liking, enjoyment and self-esteem were linked. They found that there was a strong relationship between the coach behaviour and the player evaluations. I mean, that is simple. It is so simple. How the coach behaves determines whether or not the players like them or not, or whether they like themselves or not, or whether or not they're having enjoyment. But psychology is here to figure out what is just a wives' tale and what is actually legitimate knowledge. So, good link. We know that whatever the coach does links to how the kids feel about themselves or how much they enjoy and like coming to sports. Think about how much they would like and enjoy and what their self-esteem would be like with a coach like that versus a coach like that. Different kettle of fish altogether. So let's look at the effect of enhancing coach-athlete relationships on sport attrition. Fancy way of talking about dropout. Because we know kids drop out of sport, and based on the stats previously, we know what happens between Year 7 and Year 8 predominantly. So they're our targets here. So the investigation by the same researchers from the University of Washington looked at dropout in sports depending on the coaching style. So the athletes were interviewed at the start and the end of the season. 50% of the coaches were giving mastery approach to coaching, or MAC training. I'll call it MAC training from now on. And the athletes gave higher ratings for the MAC trained coaches. So once again, they see that ratings from the players is linked to certain behaviours. But here's the killer, here's the kicker. Non-MAC coaches, there was a 25% dropout the next year. For the MAC trained coaches, there was only a 5% dropout. Now if you compound that year after year after year, you've just grown your youth. And I know at Cairns Hockey there's a few age ranges where it's a bit thin. So that's why Matt and I are doing this, so that we can do more. What can we controllably do to reduce dropout? Enrollment's another thing, but if we can keep the ones we get, even better. Now something interesting to note. No groups differed in terms of games won or lost. So it wasn't we enjoyed it more because we won more, or we didn't give our coach better ratings because we won more. There was no difference in games won or lost. They just liked their coach, they liked each other, they had a better time, and they dropped out a hell of a lot less, probably what, 300 or 400% less than the non-MAC coaches. So I hope I'm linking this in for really giving you the importance of good, effective coaching. We also found out that, not we, but the researchers found out that they could enhance self-esteem through MAC training for sports coaches. Again, we looked into the ratings of the sports coach, how much they like them, the level of fun that they're having, their liking of their teammates, and their feeling about themselves. The result? Self-esteem was dependent on coaches' behavioural approach. That is, those trained by Mac. You'll see on the left, you'll see on that small graph, pre-season, they're about the same. And then come post-season, the Mac trained coaches, the kids' self-esteem was higher. The other group didn't really change. It looks like it's dropped, but it might just be variance. But there was a definite improvement in self-esteem for the kids that train with Mac sport coaches. So that's perhaps the kind of environment that we want to create, that image I've just shown you there. And again, the groups didn't change in terms of win or lost. It wasn't that we felt better ourselves because we won more. It was a difference between the way the coaches behaved. And finally, the kicker for performance now. We can show that the MAC intervention for coaches impacted on athletic performance anxiety in a positive way. So there were changes in performance anxiety. Again, 37 coaches, roughly 200 athletes, half trained in MAC, and I probably made things, the graph looks pretty busy, and so does my finding, but essentially those trained with MAC started high and ended low. So as they got late in the season, their anxiety went down, and that's the black line on the graph. Whereas the dotted line were the non-MAC coaches, and their anxiety went up later in the season. And when kids are not anxious and they're not worried, they feel nurtured, encouraged, then they're more willing to create, they're more willing to make good decisions and back themselves. So you're going to get a better performance out of them if they haven't got performance anxiety. Because when kids are young, they generally don't have the ability to cope with anxiety all that well. So if you can create an environment where there's just a lot less pressure and performance anxiety naturally, well, you've done half the job.